Welcome to Monster Hunter Evolution Volume 2. This supercut contains episodes 14 to 26 of my Evolution series, where I go over the movesets of certain monsters and how they've changed across the series, from the early games all the way to Monster Hunter World and Rise. Volume 1 is also available to watch, containing episodes 1 to 13. These episodes can also be viewed individually through this playlist if you're interested. These supercuts exist because I thought it would be good for people to be able to watch them all in one. I hope you enjoy them. Arzuros is a fanged beast newly introduced in Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. In previous games, fanged beasts usually resembled monkeys and had movesets based on how a monkey would attack. Arzuros, however, resembles a bear and tends to move and fight like one, which sets him apart from the traditional fanged beasts. Arzuros tends to attack in swipes, swiping to the left, swiping to the right, swiping behind him, and swiping in front. These make up the vast majority of his attacks. He can also chain swipes together, up to 4 at once. Unlike previous fanged beasts, Arzuros will perform most of his attacks while standing upright, which can make it difficult to hit his head. Occasionally he will go down on all fours. Other attacks he has include a dash where he knocks you over, as well as a running attack. If you attack him from behind, he will sometimes attempt to sit back on you. Arzuros also has a pin attack, where he shakes his head and does a short hop, landing on you. From there, he will shake you up looking for honey. If there is honey in your inventory, he will steal it and begin eating it, leaving an attack opportunity. But if there isn't, he will simply perform a follow-up attack. Arzuros is quite special because he is a beginner level fanged beast. His attacks are basic but fast and teach you to keep your distance. His back takes extra damage, which teaches players about positioning, and his back attack teaches them to be wary of easy targets. He is one of the few beginner monsters to have a pin attack, and the honey trick teaches players to prepare against monsters by carrying specific items. Arzuros returned for Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, where he received an enhanced appearance and an English name. Portable 3rd was Japan exclusive, and he was named Aoshira in that game. The name Arzuros combines the word Arzur and Urzos, which is Latin for bear. In this game, he didn't really receive any notable additions in terms of moveset. Arzuros skipped Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, but returned for Generations. The main, and to be honest only change he has, is that he can aim his pin attack much more accurately. So far, he's had 3 appearances and hasn't really changed a whole lot. He is a tutorial monster, and was pretty good in his first appearance, but it would be really great if he was made to be more interesting. So Generations gave Arzuros his first ever variation, the deviant Red Helm Arzuros. In terms of design, his cream coloured fur is now red, and he has a mohawk. His braces are also increased in size, and he is overall larger than a standard Arzuros. The first change you'll notice is that Red Helm has an actual roar. His swipe combo now extends to 5 total swipes, and he tracks the player much better than before. He now has a body slam that can cause tremors, and his backward swipe will cause wind pressure. He also has a swipe that goes all the way around 360 degrees, and he chains together attacks much faster. Red Helm also gets an extremely powerful upward swipe that causes the ground to be dug up slightly, and his swipe combo is significantly faster than before. In later deviant quests, including G rank, Red Helm has the ability to run around with his paw outstretched, before performing a powerful spin attack that leaves him knocked on his behind. He also has different combo paths, such as swiping twice before performing a bear hug, and when enraged, his attack speed dramatically increases. In G rank, Arzuros gains the 5 swipe combo from Red Helm, but is otherwise left unchanged. Arzuros later returns for Monster Hunter Rise, with an updated appearance. Most notably is that his fur has actual physics now. The biggest addition he receives is the ability to shoulder tackle after charging. In this game, he doesn't receive a remix of his classic theme from the older games, instead using the theme of whatever area he is in. He doesn't receive many changes in Sunbreak, except for a faster rate of attack and higher accuracy on his pin. A new but minor attack Arzuros receives is the ability to sling a rock at you from a distance. He will mainly do this in order to get you when you're outside of combat zone. Rise introduces the Apex Arzuros. Like other Apexes, he is mostly a copy of his respective deviant, Redhelm, sharing all of his attacks. However, Apex does have his own unique aspects. When doing a swipe combo, he will often add in Redhelm's stronger swipes. If you are hit by the first strong swipe, you will be completely vulnerable to the second unless you wirefall. Apex also throws rocks a lot more in combat, while Arzuros just did it to catch you outside of combat zones. His run and spin attack has also been changed to have greater homing capabilities and also instantly stun you. Daimyo Hermitaur was introduced in Monster DOS, and is one of the first Carapacions in the series. Carapacions are crabs, and they usually have 4 legs, 2 claws and a shell. Aside from Daimyo, other notable crabs include the Shogun Ceanataur and the Shen Gauren. Daimyo's shell is the skull of a long dead Monoblos, and his claws are giant and tough. He can use them to guard as well as attack. During combat, he can push them forward together as well as attack you from the side. What makes Daimyo and other Carapacions as a whole especially unique is that they can strafe around moving left and right. Daimyo will do this in order to catch you with sideways claw attacks. He has an attack where he will try and hug you with his claws, and he can leap up into the air and jump down. Sometimes he will try and reverse into you and smack you with the Monoblos skull. Daimyo's signature attack is a water laser he can shoot out that deals hefty damage to whoever gets hit. He will sometimes guard with his claws for a bit, which causes all your attacks to bounce off. If you throw a sonic bomb, it will knock him down. Occasionally he will dig into the ground, and will try and stab you with Monoblos's horn from below. Usually he stabs randomly, but when enraged he will track you much better. Something notable about the Hermitaur is that his attacks don't really launch you away, they tend to knock you down on your butt, leaving you in place. This means that you'll often be left completely open for another attack. Daimyo doesn't deal much damage with his attacks, but the hits add up very quickly over time. In Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, Daimyo gets a subspecies, the Plum Daimyo Hermitaur. Aside from a different coloration and elemental weakness, this Hermitaur has a different shell, which is a Diablos skull. Its water laser travels much further too, and it tends to be more aggressive in how it attacks. Both Hermitaurs returned for Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, with updated appearances and several changes. Daimyo's hug attack is delayed but knocks you away further. When he's enraged, he can now strafe during his laser, making it sweep across the arena. In addition to this, while guarding, he can sometimes peek through and perform a surprise laser attack. Plum Daimyo retains his faster rate of attack from Freedom Unite. He has a very simple difference from Daimyo that does quite a bit to set him apart. Rather than strafing from left to right, Plum can also strafe in a semicircle, which can be tricky to avoid. He also does this during laser attacks. Plum can also spin while swinging his claw around, similar to an attack Shogun Ceanataur can perform. Both Hermitaurs have a new pin attack they can perform after digging, where they ambush you from below. After picking you for a bit, they will laser you across the map. Daimyo does appear in Generations, unchanged from his 4 Ultimate appearance. Plum Daimyo does not appear, and 4 Ultimate is his last appearance as of this video. In this game, Daimyo is another monster that receives a deviant form, Stonefist Hermitaur. Stonefist has a lot of differences from the standard Hermitaur. He has a slightly darker colour scheme and is overall much larger than normal. His most notable trait is that his left claw is roughly 3 times the size of that of Daimyo. Any attack that comes from this oversized claw will knock you back, while the right claw tends to hit you in place. His water lasers are much more potent too, and combined with his size it makes for a very different experience. He has Plum Daimyo and Shogun Ceanataur's spin attack, and when enraged can perform a special maneuver, where he swings Monoblos's horn and leaps into the air. One thing I find particularly notable about Stone Fist is how often he guards. It was an uncommon occurrence in Daimyo's 4th gen iteration, so seeing him do it here can throw you off and really make you wish you'd brought Sonic Bombs. In later Deviant quests, Stone Fist can use his Stone Fist to dig into the ground and launch rocks at you. He will also stay guarded for extended periods of time, taking pauses by shoving you away. Daimyo Hermitaur's next appearance is in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. He is the first new monster fought in the expansion, and he has quite a few differences from the 4 Ultimate version. When strafing, he will sometimes tilt to alter his trajectory to be curved, a bit like Plum Daimyo. When enraged, he has a new attack where he will strafe towards you and slam his claw into the ground. When he jumps into the air, he does a much better job at homing in on you, and if you attack him while guarding, he will counter-attack. Daimyo still has his pin attack, but this time he follows it up with a jumping attack. Overall, he's not much different to the 4 Ultimate version, but still has some differences to set him apart. Barioth is a flying wyvern introduced in Monster Hunter Tri for the Nintendo Wii. He has a body structure similar to Nargacuga and Tigrex, and he lives in cold regions. His body has white plating, his wings are covered in spikes to help with mobility in the snow, and he has 2 amber tusks. In Tri, Barioth attacks by pouncing. He can leap forward similarly to Nargacuga while swiping his arm, either twice in a row or 3 times if he's enraged. He can also rush forward. His signature attack is a mini cyclone he can shoot from his mouth that can inflict Ice Blight and Snowman, which is a status that traps you in ice. While Nargacuga and Tigrex would only fly to move between areas and don't fly anymore, Barioth will actively take to the sky in order to either shoot cyclones or land on you from above. He has an attack where he swings himself to the side, jabbing his claw forward, and he can swing his tail like Nargacuga. If you're hit by the end of the attack, you'll be inflicted with Ice Blight. Like a lot of monsters introduced in this game, Barioth can utilise the environment to attack. Here you can see him cling onto a nearby wall and jump off. In this game specifically, he will sometimes dive from you from out of bounds when entering an area. Barioth appeared in Monster Hunter Portable 3rd and received somewhat of a redesign. His old pounce attack and body swing have been removed entirely. Instead, he has a hip check. His speed has also been dramatically reduced, although this is more of a Portable 3rd change, rather than something exclusive to Barioth. The hitbox of his cyclone has been reduced too, so you can touch the edge and still be fine. He still has his old attacks, but the removal of the pounce and the addition of the hip check combined with his speed reduction made him an easier fight for many people, as he now tends to stay in one place. These changes were most likely made because Nargacuga and Tigrex were also in Portable 3rd. The pounce is one of Nargacuga's main attacks, and Tigrex is a monster known for charging forward, so these changes set Barioth apart from them. This is also why Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate retains these changes. Barioth in that game, including low rank, fights how he does in Portable 3rd, and the addition of the target camera also made him a bit easier to deal with. Another thing of note that's more of a game change than a Barioth one is the Tundra Caves. In Tri, Barioth could go there, and you'd have to fight him in complete darkness, unless he brought torches, which added a layer of difficulty to the fight. This is also why his eyes glow. In 3 Ultimate and Portable 3rd, these caves are lit up, so an element of difficulty but also atmosphere is now gone. While Barioth is arguably a bit easier in his games, he still tends to jump around a lot, which can be hard to avoid as he moves around so fast. If you make the effort to break Barioth's wing spikes, then his grip on the snow and ice will be reduced. This causes him to slip whenever he side hops, and prevents him from chaining any attacks from them, giving you more breathing room. Portable 3rd introduced the Sand Barioth, a subspecies who lives in the sandy plains. This Barioth is orange, and instead of ice, his spikes are used to grip the sand. One difference he has is that he will sometimes snap back after a hip check into another attack. Sand Barioth's signature move is the ability to create a long-lasting sand cyclone, leap into it, and glide into you. The sandy plains has quite wide open areas, meaning sand has less chances to wall jump. so this attack allows him to get you from anywhere. In G rank, he can shoot a couple of smaller cyclones that move around across the arena. Barioth skipped Monster Hunter 4, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and Monster Hunter Generations, but he made his return in Generations Ultimate. You can see him in this opening cutscene. Sand Barioth has not returned to any recent games as of this video. This Barioth shares similarities with his 3 Ultimate version, but he has a new attack where he performs a long distance pounce that ends with him turning around. He can also snap back from hip checks and combo into it. This attack is actually exclusive to the GU version and doesn't return for later games. The introduction cutscene shows him performing Sand's Cyclone Dive Bomb, but personally, I've never seen him do it in actual gameplay. I have also never seen him wall jump in this game, so I don't think either of which are possible. Barioth returned for Monster Hunter World's expansion, Iceborne. He is Master Rank only in this game and gets a huge revamp, with a highly detailed body. He still fights like the 3 Ultimate version, but with some new additions and changes. When changing areas, he now walks instead of flies, which means he will no longer ambush you like the older games. He can swipe his claw while swinging around. He has a new super slam he does where he jumps up and lands on the ground with his claws. It's a powerful attack he can combo into. His Ice Cyclone no longer causes the snowman status due to its removal in World. He can swing his tail around and combo it into flying. Generally, he's pretty fast in this game, almost as fast as he can be in Tri. Like the other games, you can still break his arms to reduce his mobility, and unlike Generations Ultimate, he can jump off walls again. In a later title update, Frostfang Barioth was added to the game. This is a new Barioth variant. He has thicker fur across his body, and his scales have frost on them. He looks older than the standard Barioth, and this marks the first time in the main series a monster has received both a variant and a subspecies. Frostfang can no longer fire his Cyclone. Instead, he shoots ice that remains on the floor and restricts your movement, which can lead to you being caught in attacks. He has some different combos, such as being able to super slam twice in a row. He can also jab his tusks into the ground. In terms of flight, he doesn't jump around as much as Barioth because he has more attacks that keep him in one place. The frost ends up being the real danger of the fight, as stepping in it can leave you open to attacks and there's no easy way to negate it. Barioth returned for Monster Hunter Rise, also appearing in Sunbreak. As of this video, Frostfang has not returned. In the base game, he's essentially scaled down for high rank, being a bit slower but still having most of the Iceborne version's attacks, including the new Super Slam. I have never seen this Barioth jump off a wall. In Sunbreak, he's sped up slightly and has a brand new attack in the form of this Tail Slam, which he can swing around in a follow-up attack. It's not only quick to initiate, but it hits pretty hard, and countering the first hit won't necessarily save you from the follow-up. If his claws are broken, he will fall over after the tail swing. Unlike an Iceborne, Barioth will occasionally fly to different areas, but he still won't ambush you. Lagombi is a fanged beast introduced in Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. He resembles a rabbit with 2 large ears. He usually stands upright and has a body structure similar to that of Arzuros. He can be found living in Arctic regions and is usually encountered early in the games he appears in. Lagombi shares a lot of attacks with Arzuros. He can swipe in different directions, charge backwards, and perform the occasional tackle. The biggest way Lagombi differs is his ability to slide along the ice. He uses his back legs to push himself forward and slide towards you in different attacks. He can slide forwards or in a donut. When enraged, he will slide at you, turn around and immediately slide again. He can even do it up to 3 times. He has other attacks not shared with Arzuros, such as being able to throw icy rocks at you. These simple changes make Lagombi a decent beginner monster. While he has many similarities to Arzuros, the sliding is enough to make him feel very different. It adds a huge layer of unpredictability to the fight. If he slides at you, it is often hard to tell when he will do it again, and on rare occasions he will even do it an additional time. It keeps you on edge and makes you careful not to face him head on, as he can cover distance very easily. With Arzuros you could stay just out of reach and be safe from his attacks, but because of Lagombi's sliding, either to the side or his front, and his ice projectiles, you have to be a bit more careful. Lagombi shows up in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. He has a faster rate of attack in G rank, but now he can roll a giant snowball at you that steadily increases in size. If you come into contact with it, you will be inflicted with Snowman. Unlike Arzuros, Lagombi was in Monster Hunter 4 and Ultimate. He shared a theme with Arzuros in Portable 3rd and 3 Ultimate, but in this game, he shares a theme with the weaker monsters. For Ultimate, Lagombi has a new attack where he jumps up into the air, lands on his bottom, and rolls around. As a side effect of Arzuros not being in this game, Lagombi gains his multi-swipe attack. His initial landing causes tremors, and his rolls knock you onto the floor. He can also use his ice projectiles in different ways, like throwing them at a shorter range. Lagombi also appears in Generations, being unchanged from his 4 Ultimate version, except for the fact he has his old theme back. Like Arzuros, Lagombi also gets a deviant in this game, the Snow Baron Lagombi. Snow Baron has darker fur, a more purple belly, different shaped ears, and longer fur growing on his arms. In terms of combat, he differs from the standard Lagombi by having enhanced ice throwing abilities. The ice rocks he throws are bigger, and he can throw more of them at once. He also has other enhanced abilities. For example, being near Lagombi as he slides through the ice is enough to inflict Snowman in some cases. His signature attack has him lift a snowball like in 3 Ultimate, but instead of rolling it immediately, Snow Baron will pick it up and chuck it at you, causing it to explode into smaller ice fragments. In later deviant fights, he will throw giant snowballs that stay on the ground and explode. If he's enraged, he will manually push them away after a delay, causing them to roll along. His sliding and jump attacks leave icy mist in the air that inflicts Snowman, and he has a new finisher attack that has him jump and land on his back. Lagombi returned for Monster Hunter Rise, once again being in a game alongside Arzuros. He doesn't have his classic theme from Portable 3rd, instead using the theme of whatever area he's in. Lagombi in this game has all his attacks from 4 Ultimate, including the big jump, the giant snowball, and the various different slides, but he has a higher rate of attack, making the fight quite a bit faster paced. When he throws ice chunks that land on the ground, they form snow puddles that restrict your movement. Getting hit by the giant snowball won't inflict Snowman anymore, due to its removal in the 5th generation. Sunbreak Lagombi has very few differences, but when enraged he becomes a lot faster. Not just his rate of attack, but things like his snowballs move at an incredible speed, and he chains them with other attacks. His smaller snowballs leave larger puddles too. Royal Ludroth is a Leviathan introduced in Monster Hunter Tri. He is yellow and has a mane that resembles a sponge. He is the male version of the smaller monster Ludroth, and you can tell him apart by his large size and impressive mane. Royal Ludroth is the second Leviathan encountered in Monster Hunter Tri, the first being Lagiacrus. That being said, he is the first Leviathan players of this game will kill, making him kind of like a tutorial to this class of monster. In combat, he can spit water projectiles. Some of them remain on the ground as globs that deal damage if you run into them. He can also swing his head around, flipping his tail behind him, which is an attack shared with other Leviathans. His signature attack is his ability to roll to his side, knocking you away in the process. His hip checks also have him roll around. Another attack unique to the Royal Ludroth is this charge where he runs around while spitting water globs left and right. After one charge, he will often roll into a second, and when enraged, a third. He can also leap at the player. Royal Ludroth also has a couple other land-based attacks, where he can swish his tail from side to side, or swipe his arm. He can also slam his body down and dash across the arena. In Monster Hunter Tri, Royal Ludroth is one of the monsters capable of going underwater. Most of his attacks are different versions of his land-based ones, but he can flick his tail up from below and dash at you. It is worth mentioning that when exhausted, Royal Ludroth's mane will shrivel up and appear shrunken, making him look much smaller than he would normally appear. He later made an appearance in Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. This game doesn't have underwater combat, being land only, and so Royal Ludroth only fights on land in this game. In fact, he is the only underwater monster from Tri to be in Portable 3rd, with Gobel, Sadius and Lagiacrus being absent. Portable 3rd slowed down a lot of monsters from Tri, and Royal Ludroth is no different. He doesn't move or attack as fast as he did in that game. Despite this, he still has all his land-based attacks. A visual change worth mentioning is that in Tri, Royal would shoot his water globs with his head and front legs raised above the ground. From Portable 3rd onwards, this was changed that his entire body is mostly grounded. He gains a subspecies in this game, the Purple Ludroth. This is a poisonous Royal Ludroth and his spongy mane is purple to reflect this, as if he has absorbed poison. The poison sums up most of the differences between the two monsters. Every single attack that would inflict water from the Royal Ludroth instead inflicts poison from purple, such as the projectiles or the body slam. Both Royal and Purple return for Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. In this game, Royal Ludroth moves much faster and once again can go underwater. Purple, however, will always fight on land. This game marks the last time Purple Ludroth has appeared, and the last time Royal Ludroth could be fought underwater. Royal Ludroth's next appearance was in Monster Hunter Generations and its expansion, once again being land only. Aside from speed differences, he is completely unaltered from 3 Ultimate, even in G rank. He later appeared in Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak, and for a moment I would really like to praise the details on his spongy mane. It looks really good in this game. Anyway, Royal fights pretty much the same as he always has, but in Rise, he has a new attack where he swings his head around, launching players away. When enraged, he will chain into a roll attack. Sunbreak Ludroth has a massive speed increase and is very aggressive. Whenever he charges, he will always follow up with a leap attack. When he performs a body slam, he will double it up. His race of attack is generally faster, making him much harder than he was in Rise. He also gets Lagiacrus' slide charge back, which he didn't have in Rise. Brachydios is a brute wyvern introduced in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. He is the flagship monster of the game and can live in harsh climates like the volcano or the tundra. Previous brute wyverns would mostly attack by charging or biting, but Brachydios is different in that he attacks with his fists. He is the first monster in the series to make use of Blast Blight, which was a new status ailment that would cause you to explode if you came into contact with an attack. Brachydios inflicts blast by smacking you with his fists, which are covered in explosive slime. He will punch the ground and leave it there, where it goes from green to yellow to red before exploding. Touching the slime when it's on the ground will inflict Blast Blight, and ideally you don't want to be near it when it explodes. Most of his attacks involve punching to the side, punching downwards. He often attacks in twos, one after the other, and each attack leaves slime on the ground. This side punch in particular has his tail swing around him, which can knock you over. He can also swing his tail around as part of its own attack. It is possible for Brachydios to run out of slime when he's attacking, and when that happens his fists will not inflict Blast Blight, nor will they leave slime on the ground. To avoid this, he will often stop and lick them, applying fresh slime. This one attack here has him quickly lick them before leaping at the player. He can also charge while punching down, applying slime as he goes. Brachydios constantly pivots and moves around while fighting, so you have to move around to dodge him too. But you also have to be wary of the slime puddles everywhere, which makes for a fun dynamic. When enraged, he will begin to excrete slime all over his body and it becomes yellow. The result of this is that the slime left on the ground will take less time to explode and certain fist attacks will explode instantly, raising the challenge substantially. He gains access to two new attacks, one where he digs his horn into the ground, causing rapid explosions to occur in front of him, and another where he digs his horn and fist down, causing explosions around him. Breaking his fists has a somewhat substantial effect on the fight, as it causes slime to come off his fists more easily. This means he'll have to stop and lick his fists far more often than normal, giving you more breathing room. G-rank Brachydios doesn't do that much differently. Oh goddammit, give me a sec. G-rank Brachydios doesn't do that much differently. He attacks a bit faster, and will sometimes jump without licking his fist, making him a little more unpredictable. Brachydios returned for Most Hunter 4. He doesn't change all that much, but he has been refined quite a bit. His explosions are much smaller, and seems to more accurately reflect the slime puddles in terms of size. His area of effect explosion attack has brighter indicators for where the explosions will occur. You can also actually shield the explosions in this game, which was not possible in 3 Ultimate. Brachydios can also do his horn stab when neutral, only this will cause a much larger pool of slime to spread on the ground. Breaking his horn will not reduce the puddle in any way. When he is enraged, he can move a lot faster. Another addition is that Brachydios can now climb, and if he has slime on his fists, the puddles will stick to the walls. This is so that he can reach you in certain areas of the game. In G rank, he once again doesn't get many changes, but he now has the ability to sprint. Sometimes he will just run at you, and it makes him a lot less predictable and changes up the fight in a small but effective way. The post-game of G rank introduces a new variant, the Raging Brachydios. This one is much larger and slightly green, with yellow slime on his body by default. Some of it covers his tail, meaning those attacks will also inflict Blast Blight. Raging is a lot slower, but the key difference here is that the slime on his fists, head, or tail will sometimes glow red, meaning all attacks from those parts will cause immediate explosions. Hitting them in this state will cause them to explode in place and deal massive damage, before becoming yellow again. This adds a new dynamic to the fight, where you now have to be a bit more careful about how you approach him, because attacking without thinking will put you in danger. Raging can only be fought in the special arena of Ingle Isle, and because traps cannot be placed here, he cannot be captured. Both are also featured in Most Hunter Generations, with few if any changes. Brachydios feels faster in some ways, but it's harder to tell. Brachydios returned for Most Hunter World's expansion. In Iceborne, he looks much more detailed than before, very shiny and polished. He only resides in the Elder's Recess and the Guiding Lands, not the Hoarfrost Reach, which is interesting because he could actually be found in 3 and 4 Ultimate's respective ice maps. Brachydios has quite a few changes here. He no longer inflicts the standard Blast Blight. This is a new type called Blast Scourge, which takes 5 evades to get rid of instead of 3. Sometimes you can also get stuck in his slime puddles. He can now swing his tail from side to side, an attack shared with other brute wyverns. When performing his punching advance, he can adjust his direction, and he has a quick horn thrust that he can chain into other attacks. A very welcome change is that his horn can also lose slime, and when depleted, the thrust won't create the large puddle. His area of effect explosion attack is now indicated by glowing slime puddles, which is a change that also makes a lot of sense. In general, he tends to be much faster, and chain attacks together in 3s rather than 2s like the old games. Iceborne's 3rd title update added Raging Brachydios to the game. He can only be fought in the Guiding Lands, which is completely devoid of other monsters. Raging has been changed quite a bit, but let's get the most impactful difference out of the way. He's still a larger, slower, greener Brachydios. His slime can still turn red and cause explosions. But in Iceborne, hitting the slime will cause it to fall on the floor and explode after a moment. Getting hit by Raging's explosions will cause Fire Blight. He can perform an attack with his tail similar to Diablos where he slams it down, and this creates a slime puddle on the ground unless you sever it, where it instead leaves nothing. He can also dig his fists into the ground and dig up explosions, either once or twice in a row. The Guiding Lands allows you to place traps, and Raging can be affected by them. When he reaches a low enough health threshold, he will retreat to Area 15 of the Guiding Lands. Once he spots you inside, he will begin rapidly punching the ground, imbuing it with slime before screaming and blowing it all up. This is Raging Brachydios' final stand. He is close to dying, and so he discharges all his slime into the ground. You cannot leave the area and you cannot place traps. One of you will lose this fight. The music you are hearing now will also play during this phase. Every single attack will cause massive slime puddles to seep into the ground. Standing on them won't cause Blast Scourge, but they'll seep your health. Raging will sometimes roar, causing more slime to appear. His body is steaming and all his slime is going onto the ground, although his physical attacks will still inflict blast. When enough slime is on the ground, Raging will let out a roar that blows it all up. The explosion damages not just you but him as well, and this cycle keeps going until one of you dies. Volvidon is a fanged beast introduced in Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. He resembles an armadillo and lives in hot regions like the desert or the volcano. If you recall, Arzuros and Lagombi were also introduced in this game, and Volvidon fights similarly to them, occasionally performing different swipe attacks. He also shares the same theme as them. Like Lagombi however, he also has unique traits that differentiate him from Arzuros. While Lagombi slides, Volvidon rolls. Rolls to the left, rolls backwards and forward. He rolls to reposition himself as well as attack. Something funny to do is smack him when he rolls towards you. It causes him to roll backwards and collapse. Anyway, when Volvidon is in position, he will use his tongue to attack from afar, and getting hit will draw you in as he prepares for his next attack. He can also fire paralysis globs from his mouth. Volvidon can also leap into the air and land, causing tremors. And he can release toxic gas from his body which causes stench. Like Arzuros and Lagombi, he later appeared in 3 Ultimate, with some G-rank additions. Here he can swing his tongue around in an arc, and he can perform a series of smaller slams that have him go all over the place. Volvidon skipped 4 and 4 Ultimate, but returned for Generations. In this game he can now jump around like in 3 Ultimate's G-rank, but otherwise gets nothing new. In Generations Ultimate, he once again performs his tongue swing, and generally moves a bit faster. Volvidon skipped World, but appeared in Rise. In this game, he has access to all of his attacks, except for the tongue swing. His fart has now been changed so that it comes out from his behind, rather than all over his body. In Sunbreak, he attacks at a faster rate. Wait, that's it? Is it really true that across every single entry Volvidon has been in, he only gets 2 changes? A tongue swing that isn't even in Sunbreak, and a jump attack that barely hits you anyway. Oh, and don't forget Rise making his fart attack look even more like a fart. Why is this the case? So what gives? Why has Volvidon received so few changes throughout the series? Well, let's look at Arzuros and Lagombi. The scripts for their respective videos are over double the length. This is for a few reasons. The first is that Lagombi appeared in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and he got quite a few changes in that game. The second is that he and Arzuros got deviant forms in Generations that are also quite a bit different. In fact, Arzuros also got an Apex form in Rise. I've covered a lot of monsters in this series now, and you do start to notice quite a few patterns. Monsters that were introduced in Portable 3rd, such as Zinogre, Arzuros or Lagombi, got little to no additions in 3 Ultimate. Some of them, like Zinogre or Barroth, at least received a subspecies, but some simply got an attack or 2, which is the case for Volvidon. If a monster returned to 4 Ultimate, they usually received some of their biggest changes yet. The Zinogre we know today was defined in 4 Ultimate. Daimyo Hermitaur got some of his best changes, Kushala, Teostra and Chameleos as well. Volvidon did not appear in this game. Now he and many other monsters that weren't in 4 were in Generations, but the problem here is that Generations had less development time and around 70 monsters to implement. Some of them last appeared in Freedom Unite, so they had to severely revamp them, such as Basarios or the Shogun Ceanataur. It was even harder in Generations Ultimate with 93 total monsters. Volvidon was simply not a priority. And then we look at the 5th generation, where they more or less remade everything from scratch. Volvidon appears, one of his attacks was reworked, but other than that, he, Arzuros and Lagombi get very few changes. Likely because again, they're not really a priority compared to monsters like Rathalos, Zinogre, Gyrotodos, the Elder Dragons and more. There is also the possibility the developers simply have no ideas for Volvidon. Let's look at what he does. He rolls, he uses his tongue, and he spits paralysis globs. The 2 new attacks in 3 Ultimate involve his tongue, and him rolling around in an unpredictable way. It says a lot that the only additions came in the next entry and nothing else. I myself can't visualize this monster doing anything he hasn't already done, except for maybe a pin attack. Maybe he could fire more paralysis globs, maybe he could swing his tongue in different directions, but it's all just variations of things he can already do. Perhaps you could give him a subspecies or a variant. What if he expelled poison gas that lingered in the air? What if he left fire on the ground as he rolls? Similar to Violet Mizutsune. Generally, it's hard to think of new things for him, which might explain why he's been so neglected. Barroth is a brute wyvern introduced in Monster Hunter Tri. Brute wyverns are monsters that stand on two legs, and they have two short front-facing arms, a head and a tail. Barroth is one of the very first introduced to the series, and he tends to live in arid regions. He has a large ridge on his head that he uses to attack with. Monster Hunter Tri also has a flying wyvern named Barioth, but aside from being in the same game, the two are unrelated. Barroth's main method of attacking is charging. He bows his head and rushes at you in an attempt to hit you with his ridge. He can also rush forward in a bite attack or bite to the side. Barroth likes to roll around and coat himself with mud, which can reduce the damage you deal to him. It can be broken off, which causes shiny drops to fall. When he's covered in mud, he can shake it off, causing it to drop around him, and getting hit will cause you to be covered in it. Barroth is usually stuck in one place during this attack, so while it's free damage, there's a lot of risk involved. He has other attacks, such as being able to swing his tail around or smash his ridge down. If his head is covered in mud, then huge blobs will fall on the ground. Barroth's ridge can actually be broken off fully and carved, but only when you're using a blunt weapon. Doing this will stop him from expelling mud with his ridge slam. Barroth returned for Portable 3rd, and changed from Tri in terms of moveset. In this game he has a subspecies, the Jade Barroth. This one lives in the tundra and is a different colour, with a larger ridge on his head. Rather than mud, Jade rolls around in the snow and can coat hunters in it. Jade has a few moveset changes as well. He has a hip check, and he can dig out ice chunks with his ridge and toss them at you. Jade can also charge like Barroth, but he has a different alternate charge that has him move around in unpredictable directions, where he will often try and curve around to catch you off guard. They both return to 3 Ultimate. Here, Barroth has a hip check like Jade and the other brute wyverns, and he can sling mud behind him as he charges. Jade moves a bit faster than before, but otherwise has no other changes, and this game is currently his last appearance. Barroth skipped for Ultimate, which is the only entry he's missed. He returned for Generations Ultimate. He is mostly a direct copy of his 3 Ultimate version, but this one will slightly curve his charges to try and catch you off guard. Barroth is also in Monster Hunter World. In this game, the mud won't coat you anymore since that status has been removed, but it will leave pools behind that severely slow you down. More of his attacks leave mud on the ground, like his hip check. He can also smack his tail down or side to side, leaving mud behind if it's been coated. A funny addition in this game is that Barroth will try and expel mud from his body even when he doesn't have any on him, and this results in him looking confused, wondering why nothing is falling off. Iceborne Barroth pretty much has no additions, with the exception of his rate of attack. Barroth is also in Rise and is relatively unchanged from World, although in this game he tends to move a bit faster. In Sunbreak, he spreads much larger mud puddles with his attacks. Khezu is a flying wyvern introduced in the very first Monster Hunter game. He's pale, and has a long neck he can use to attack with. Something curious about Khezu is that he doesn't have any eyes, and therefore he cannot see. To reflect this, he does not have any battle music, it's just silence, with the exception of his roar and other sound effects. Before we proceed, a special thank you to my patrons on Patreon for making this video possible. Khezu has a few physical attacks. He can bite while stretching his neck, he can swing his tail around, dash at you, or leap from a distance. Sometimes he'll jump onto the ceiling and cling there, and will try and jump down on you. Khezu has lightning abilities. He can create an electric field, or he can send thunderbolts at you that cause paralysis. These attacks are generally the most dangerous parts of Khezu. He's quick to initiate the electric field, so you have little time to back away, and the paralysis projectiles split into 3, making them hard to dodge. When enraged, his projectile splits into 5, and he can leap while covered in the electric field. These specific additions were added in Freedom 2 and Unite. It is also worth mentioning that Khezu likes to scream. Khezu has a subspecies, the Red Khezu. He's different from the standard Khezu in that he has an extra physical attack where he swings his neck around. Khezu was not in Monster Hunter Tri. This game had a mostly original cast of monsters, although some had similarities to monsters from previous games. In this case, Gigginox feels like a stand-in for Khezu, so let's discuss him. Gigginox is a flying wyvern introduced in Monster Hunter Tri. Like Khezu, he lives primarily in cold regions, favouring dark caves in particular. While Khezu has the body structure of a standard flying wyvern, Gigginox moves similarly to Tigrex or Nagakuga, with his wings planted on the ground most of the time, and he is also a lot flatter. The area music plays for him as well. While he's pale like Khezu, Gigginox's underside is red. He also glows in the dark, and his tail resembles his head. While Gigginox also doesn't have eyes, he can still sense prey by their heat signatures. Gigginox can perform a double bite attack where he stretches his neck from side to side. He can charge, body slam, as well as leap across the arena. He has little babies called Giggis that spawn from large globules called Gigisacs. Giggis will try and latch onto you and drain your health, and Gigginox can create more by making Gigisacs during combat. He also has the ability to poison you, either by spitting a projectile that festers on the ground, creating a wave underneath him, or creating a glob, similar to how he makes his Gigisacs. Gigginox can also climb on walls as well as the ceiling and attack from there, either by jumping down or throwing poison blobs at you. When he becomes enraged, his skin darkens and he becomes much faster. He also has a pin attack he unleashes from the ceiling, where he stretches to the floor and attacks you from there. He returns for Portable Third. High rank for Monster Hunter Tri isn't officially available anymore, so he can't be fought there, but in that game and this one, his poison becomes enhanced, dealing extra damage. Gigginox gains a subspecies in this game, the Baleful Gigginox. This one is more yellow in colour, with a purple underside, and he uses paralysis instead of poison. While hanging onto the ceiling, Baleful can throw paralysis balls at you. Similarly to Khezu, he can not only launch 3 at once while on the ground, but he can also create a field that paralyzes everyone around him. He can't lay Gigisacs, instead laying paralysis eggs that explode. He can use his tail to attack the same way as his head, swinging it around. Baleful turns bright red when enraged, and he has a different pin attack where he holds you on the floor and sucks you in from there. It's worth mentioning that breaking Baleful's head will reduce his paralysis balls to standard thunder. In 3 Ultimate, Gigginox gains the ability to double bite with his tail. In addition to this, he can place a Gigisac on his back which passively spawns them. It can be broken by dealing enough damage. Baleful can do the same, although his is a paralysis egg that paralyzes you if you don't destroy it. If you ignore defunct mobile spin-offs, Gigginox is exclusive to the 3rd generation games, and he has not returned for future ones. He has also never been in the same game as Khezu. Speaking of, Khezu returned to Monster Hunter 4 along with the Red Khezu. In this game, he can stretch his neck out further in a long-range bite attack. When he performs his dash attack, he can now coat himself with electricity for additional damage. Sometimes, when Khezu unleashes his electricity field, he quickly follows up with a brief blast. He can now also climb on walls, where he will either jump off, bite, or unleash an electricity field. When on the ceiling, he will sometimes drip liquid that stuns you, as well as bite from above. It's also worth mentioning Khezu's projectiles split into 3 rather than 5. He also has the ability to throw paralysis balls at you. Red Khezu has the ability to do this on the ground. In G rank, Khezu can drop paralysis fields from the ceiling. His second electricity field attack is expanded massively, and he has a brand new pin attack that's pretty horrifying. Red Khezu has the ability to stretch his neck while sniffing around, and he can throw paralysis balls behind him. Overall, these are the only 2 changes he gets, and this is the last we've seen of this subspecies as of the making of this video. Khezu was in Generations as well, identical to how he was in 4 and 4 Ultimate. He skipped World, but later returned to Rise. I would really like to take a moment to discuss just how uncomfortably detailed he is. You can really see the sliminess of his skin, the throbbing of his veins beneath it. You can hear the squelching of his footsteps. It's just wonderful design, truly horrifying. In Rise, Khezu is mostly the same as he is in 4, although when enraged, he can spit his lightning projectiles twice in a row quickly. In Sunbreak, he can once again spit 5 projectiles at once. He can also drag his neck across the floor and sling volleys of lightning balls at you, sometimes one after the other. Shogun Ceanataur is a Carapacion introduced in Monster Hunter DOS. He is one of 3 crabs introduced, with one being Daimyo Hermitaur and the other being the Shengaoran. Shogun wears a Gravios skull on his back and has 2 sharp pincers he uses as blades. Before we proceed, a special thanks to my patrons on Patreon for making this video possible. Like Daimyo, Shogun likes to move in unorthodox directions and attack with his claws. He can strike in front of him, he can strafe to the side while swiping a claw, he can hug the space in front of him and spin around, swiping as he moves. When enraged, his claws extend, lengthening their range as he becomes more aggressive. Dodging becomes harder as a result of this, and he can also rush forwards. Shogun will sometimes dig underground, staying there for a period of time before resurfacing, trying to ambush anyone who walks above him. He can also cling onto ceilings and land on people below. Shogun Ceanataur uses the Gravios skull to fire lasers. While Gravioses were made of fire, Shoguns are made from liquid. Anyway, if you deal enough damage to the skull, you break it completely, resulting in Put it back! Put it back! Why does it have physics? Why is it... Wait, that would mean the liquid that he shoots is actually... Hitting this thing will cause Shogun to take extra damage. He can only have 2 shells per hunt, so once you've broken them he won't be able to get any more. Shogun can have a different shell from an unknown monster, and this one doesn't let him fire an undisclosed liquid. If you break his claws, he will be enraged for the remainder of the hunt. Freedom Unite introduced the Terra Shogun Ceanataur, a bronze-coloured Shogun with a black Gravios skull. Unlike the standard Shogun, this is the only shell he'll have. Terra has slightly larger claws and can be more aggressive, but the biggest difference is that he can use the water laser pretty much whenever he wants, whereas Shogun could only use it on ceilings. Terra's shell is also much harder to break. Also, this is his only game ever. He was introduced in Freedom Unite, but he never returns to any other game. Shogun, on the other hand, finally returned for Generations. In this game, his moveset has been refined with smoother animations. Breaking his claws will no longer cause him to be permanently enraged. That being said, his claws can now cause bleeding, and is practically guaranteed with certain enraged attacks. In addition to this, when digging underground he will now try to repeatedly attack from below, rather than just stay there like in the older games. His hug attack is often delayed, and he can move around in semicircles like the plumb Daimyo Hermitaur. In Generations Ultimate, aside from being faster, he receives one of his most infamous additions. He grinds his claws together and leaps forward, slamming them down. This attack has amazing accuracy, is quick to initiate, and will always cause bleeding. Shogun Ceanataur was one of 2 older monsters in Generations Ultimate to get a deviant, the Rust Razor Ceanataur. Rust Razor looks like a standard Shogun, but his claws are rusty and your weapons will bounce off them. During combat, Rust Razor has access to all of Shogun's attacks, but he will also move around with his back facing to you. This is because, like Terra Shogun, he can freely use Gravios' skull to direct lasers. He can fire them straight, sweep them around or up and down in a quick homing blast. After some time he will dig into the ground, although not to ambush you. No, instead he comes out wearing the skull of Glavenus. He will sharpen his claws using the skull when enraged, causing them to become softer but much more dangerous. Rust Razor has access to new claw attacks, such as rapidly striking the ground in 2s or 4s. Like Glavenus, Rust Razor can hold his blade in his, or in this case the skull's jaws, and let loose with a spin attack, which not only causes bleeding, but defends down. After some time, he will switch back to a Gravios skull. Like Terra Shogun, Rust Razor appeared in one game and so far has not appeared again. Shogun Ceanataur returned for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, with quite a few changes. He can still hug like in Generations, but the classic walk attack has been changed to a run, where he combos into a hug. He still has his other attacks from the older games, such as the Claw Slam, as well as the ability to inflict bleed. Shogun borrows a few attacks from Rust Razor too. He can fire the water laser from the Gravios skull and aim it around, as well as perform his rapid stabs, although only 2 and not 4. Shogun can also stab behind with his claw and swing his body around. Unlike the older games, breaking his skull twice will not stop him from getting a new one. Basarios was introduced in the very first Monster Hunter game. He is a flying wyvern with a rocky hide, who lives in volcanic regions as well as swamps. Basarios is the younger form of the flying wyvern Gravios, who was introduced in the same game. Gravios is significantly bigger, with a larger body, tail, and a differently shaped head. We will be discussing both in this video. Before we proceed any further, a special thank you to my patrons for making this video possible. Basarios starts off disguised as an inconspicuous rock in the ground. Usually he's not too hard to find, but he does blend in with other rocks in the area. He's one of the few monsters that won't immediately try and fight you upon entering the area. When engaging in combat, Basarios can perform several physical attacks, including charging, biting, or performing a hip check. He can also swing his tail around or side to side. He can release poisonous gas as an area of effect attack, as well as fire a laser. On many occasions though, the laser will fail and Basarios will shoot nothing. In G rank, he gets stronger poison, but that's about it. Occasionally, he can also expel sleep gas from his body, as well as shoot a fireball. Gravios does not hide on the ground. He generally has the same attacks, but his added size makes them trickier to avoid. Gravios can briefly fly into the air and land, knocking away anyone close by. He can also fire lasers, and unlike Basarios, he is much more consistent with them. Gravios will expel sleep gas rather than poison, but in G rank, he can expel fiery gas as well, either while standing still or right after a laser attack. He can also sweep his laser, but both it and the gas attacks are fairly uncommon. This is most likely because they're favoured by his subspecies, the Black Gravios. This one is, well, black, and tends to be physically tougher with a more resistant body. This Gravios favours heat attacks, preferring to fire lasers and expel gas, but otherwise has few differences to the standard version. All three returned for Monster Hunter 4. Basarios in this game are encountered exclusively in the Everwood, and to reflect this, he can often be found covered in moss. His moveset has been smoothed out a bit, and some new additions include the ability to roll attack. He has a subspecies in this game, the Ruby Basarios, which is simply a Basarios coated in rubies. The main differences are that some attacks will drop rubies which can be mined on the floor, including his hip check and rolls, as well as the ability to expel gas in short bursts. In G rank, Basarios can fire 3 fireballs. He will walk backwards while swinging his tail, and in addition to this, he will sometimes roll from a charge, covering a wider area. Ruby Basarios gains the ability to roll twice in a row. Gravios in high rank also has the ability to roll, and he tends to use his gas and laser attacks more than he did in the older games, although still quite balanced with his physical attacks. Black Gravios also returns, once again with a higher focus on gas and laser attacks. In this game, he has a new laser attack that he aims down and up, in an attempt to catch players close to him while aiming at people far away. In G rank, Gravios gets the ability to walk while shooting small fire bursts, aiming at random players. Black Gravios can also do it, only he expels gas with each fire blast. He also gets a new laser he can use while turning around. A cool addition with 4 Ultimate Gravios is that you can break his back. This means that when he performs a gas attack after a laser, the gas is expelled from his back rather than his belly, allowing you more attack opportunities, although this won't stop the standard gas attacks. Gravios can overcome the Frenzy virus to become Apex Gravios. The easiest way to describe him would be a Black Gravios with attacks that can inflict the Frenzy. He fights identically to Black Gravios in the Apex state, and fights like himself when you knock him out. Both Basarios and Gravios return to Generations Ultimate, specifically the expansion. Here they're unchanged from 4 Ultimate, and are more or less direct copies. Ruby Basarios is not in this game, nor is Black Gravios. Basarios and only Basarios returned for Monster Hunter Rise. Having only one of them is a series first, as they've never been separated before. When you encounter him, he won't always be disguised as a rock either. Basarios gets a sizable rework in this game. When he performs a gas or laser based attack, his body and head respectively will heat up and soften, allowing you to deal more damage and not bounce. In terms of moveset, he can tunnel underground and try and ambush you from below. In the expansion, Basarios gets the ability to turn during his rolls, making them harder to dodge. Uragaan is a brute wyvern introduced in Monster Hunter Tri. He is pretty big, with a large chin and golden crystals on his back. Occasionally when discussing monsters that originated in Tri, I use footage from that game, for the sake of authenticity, but also because sometimes the monster is different compared to 3 Ultimate, like with Barioth. In this case though, Uragaan is almost identical in both Tri and 3 Ultimate. There are 2 primary methods in which Uragaan performs his attacks, slamming his chin like a hammer and rolling around while curled up. He will always smash his chin twice when roaring, but also on other occasions, he will either perform a single slam or chain 2 to 4. Uragaan can also perform a smash with more wind-up, which causes massive tremors. In terms of rolling, Uragaan curls up and takes off, rolling around the arena. When enraged, he can roll for longer distances, and when exhausted, he will sometimes fall over, since he doesn't have the strength to maintain his momentum. In Area 6 of the 3rd generation volcano, Uragaan can perform an exclusive attack where he digs up to a nearby cliff and rolls down, using his momentum to roll around the whole area for a while. He can toss volcanic rocks with his tail by swinging it around. They will explode after enough time has passed, or by being hit with an attack. In addition to this, he can expel either fiery or sleep gas from his body. In Portable 3rd onwards, Uragaan's back can be mined whenever he falls over. This game also introduces a subspecies, the Steel Uragaan. This one is coloured blue, with a bright orange chin. He generally has the same abilities, but he and the rocks he throws can expel stench gas that prevents you from healing. He can throw rocks with his tail and immediately detonate them with a chin slam too. In 3 Ultimate, Uragaan is able to chain a roll into a powerful chin slam. Steel Uragaan also has this new combo, but he can expel his stench gas at the same time. His stench rocks are also much larger. Uragaan skipped Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate completely, but returned for Generations. In this game, he is pretty much identical to how he was in Tri and 3 Ultimate. In fact, you could almost say he's too identical. Monster Hunter 4 introduced greater verticality into the series with its new maps, and some of them are in Generations, including the Volcanic Hollow, where you can now fight Uragaan. In Area 8, there's a massive cliff that you can jump down or climb up. It's possible for monsters to access you on both planes either by climbing or flying, such as with Brachydios or Gravios. Uragaan was not given a climbing animation, so there is no way for him to access you, so you can just stand on the cliff and avoid the rocks he launches at you. In G rank, he is also identical to his previous 3 Ultimate G rank iteration. His steel subspecies did not return, but Uragaan did get a deviant, Crystal Beard Uragaan. Crystal Beard is larger than average, darker in colour, and his chin is covered in crystals. In terms of abilities, he has access to stronger chin slams and G-rank Uragaan's roll to chin slam combo. He can send out explosive rocks, but occasionally one of them can be a mineable crystal that expels sleep gas. Crystal Beard can use his chin to dig rocks out of the ground. In later deviant quests, he can expel explosive rocks while rolling. Uragaan returned for Monster Hunter World, but before we get to him, I want to briefly go over Radobaan, a fellow brute wyvern introduced earlier in the game. Radobaan lives in the Rotten Vale, and is covered in bones that are stuck to him. He has similar abilities to Uragaan and is distantly related to him. Underneath all the bones, they look pretty much identical. Radobaan has Uragaan's roll to chin slam, and he can expel sleep gas only. He is greatly more agile when rolling, being able to pause and immediately turn around into another roll in the opposite direction. He can also do this really sick sideways roll, and he can dig his chin into the ground, up or right and left. Rather than tossing rocks, Rado throws fragments of bone that shatter on the ground. Dealing damage to him will break them off his body, which causes him to lose his grip on the ground when he's rolling and start doing this weird slow roll. He can replenish his bone armor by rolling around on the ground, which is possible because the Rotten Vale is filled with corpses. In Iceborne, more of his attacks will send out bone fragments, and he can chain more attacks together. Now back to Uragaan. In World, he has pretty much all his old attacks from the older games. Like G-rank Crystal Beard, he leaves rocks behind as he rolls that later explode. His hip check can also drop them. He can't turn or do sideways rolls like Radobaan. Instead, he simply rolls the way he normally does. However, he can turn around in certain areas of the Elder's Recess by rolling onto the walls to gain momentum in order to turn the other way. In Iceborne, Uragaan's rocks are now much bigger, and when he rolls in them, he becomes consumed by fire, allowing him to deal even more damage, and he can launch rocks with even more attacks. Deviljo is a brute wyvern introduced in Monster Hunter Tri, and he is primarily known for 3 big things. The first is his savage strength. Deviljo is usually officially encountered near the end of the game, and is very tough with strong attacks. The second is his status as an invader. I say he's encountered officially near the end of the game, but he can be encountered much earlier as an invader, coming into your quests to majorly disrupt what you're doing. He is usually fightable in every single map in every game he appears in, and in games like Tri, 4 and Generations is almost guaranteed to show up in many high NG rank quests. The third is his insatiable hunger. Deviljo uses up a lot of energy, and so he constantly needs to eat. This leads to him eating a variety of things such as hunters, monster corpses, or even meat you lay down on the ground. Deviljo will eat anything that's made of meat. Mostly. Before we get into this video, a special thanks to my Patreons for making this video possible. Deviljo is kind of like Monster Hunter's take on a T-Rex. He's massive, with a powerful jaw, strong legs and tiny arms. He mostly attacks by biting, by lunging forward, swinging around, or doing this rapid bite combo where he bites from side to side. This attack is particularly infamous because his tail also has a hitbox and he tracks you while doing it. Speaking of, Deviljo can also swing his tail around. He can hip check, throwing his entire weight at you, and stomp his left leg, causing massive tremors. As a projectile, he can dig out rocks with his jaw. When enraged, his entire body will heat up and glow red, highlighting scars from old battles. He becomes stronger, faster, and gains the ability to fire a laser of pure dragon energy. Deviljo can also become exhausted. For almost every monster in the series, this is an advantage for the hunter, as the monster usually becomes slow or feeble. Not Deviljo however, as his saliva is acidic, and so every bite attack will inflict defense down when he's exhausted. He will also try and pin you down more than normal. Deviljo returned for Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. In this game, he can sometimes counter after being flinched, and gets a new attack where he swings his tail all the way around while moving forward, both of which were later carried over to 3 Ultimate. Deviljo in this game's G rank doesn't have any new attacks, but he can combo existing ones into a stomp, such as his lunging bite or dragon breath. G rank introduces the Savage Deviljo. Like Furious Rajang, this is a permanently enraged Deviljo, constantly glowing red and stronger than normal. He can enter an even angrier state, where his whole body is covered in a red hue and dragon energy fizzles around his face. As his attacks become much faster, his laser also has added range. Both return from Monster Hunter 4. Deviljo's only change in this game is that he can climb up walls. Unlike someone, Savage on the other hand has an existing attack altered. His lunging bite is now a pin attack. Getting hit will throw you into a unique animation, where Savage chews you while attacking other hunters in the area. Savage can also combo into pin attacks. G rank of 4 Ultimate is where things get a bit strange. Deviljo and Savage Deviljo cannot be encountered in normal quests. Savage is only available as an event quest, but in most cases, they both can only be encountered rarely in the Everwood. So I'll show Generations Ultimate's G rank Deviljo, who is functionally the same. Aside from being able to combo into stomps like 3 Ultimate, the 4th generation G rank Deviljo will perform this new laser attack where he stands upright before firing a laser upwards. Savage Deviljo can do this regardless of if he's enraged or not. 4 Ultimate also introduces the Apex Deviljo, one that managed to overcome the Frenzy virus. He's functionally the same as Savage Deviljo in this state, but he will cause earthquakes with his stomps and actively shift his body to make sure they hit you. In Generations, Savage Deviljo's bite attacks when enraged will deal Dragon Blight. He's also pretty much identical to how he was in 4 Ultimate, so he still constantly tries to pin you down. Deviljo was added to Monster Hunter World in its first major update. He received a major visual overhaul as well as quite a few moveset changes. His bite attack combo has been altered so that he homes in on you much more than he used to, and ends up with a dig on the ground. He has a brand new attack where he slams his head full force down on the floor, and his dragon laser has been changed so that it's less like a laser and more like actual breath. He can also attack while in a pitfall trap. A fun addition is that Deviljo can now physically pick up smaller large monsters such as the Great Jagras or Uragaan and toss them around in an attempt to damage you both. Deviljo did not return to Iceborne, aside from this one cutscene. Instead, Savage Deviljo starts randomly appearing on quests and expeditions following the death of Velkhana. Many of his bite attacks leave dragon energy in the air, including his slam from World, which now has him breathing it as he raises his head. He also has several new breath attacks, such as firing it in a straight line on the ground or firing it in a cloud. In these cases, the dragon energy lingers and damages anyone who stands in it. When enraged for long enough, he can fire a concentrated laser blast that explodes on the ground with a massive radius. Savage can also leap towards the hunter and tumble over. When enraged, he will slam his head into the ground twice and perform a new breath attack where he fires it straight ahead of him as part of a combo. He also has a different pin where he throws you onto the ground and then slams his head down. So that was volume 2 of the Evolution series. I hope you enjoyed that compilation of videos. I will do volume 3 when the final episodes are complete, and I'm looking forward to sharing them with you. Remember to like and subscribe, and have a good day.